I wish I had kept in touch with more people from Stony Brook. Just be networking. I think networking is undervalued a lot of the time. Partly why I'm successful is because I didn't have this barrier mindset. It was really great. I feel like proud to be an alumni just because they're making such an effort to like engage the alumni out here in California. I felt like I was moving away from like my family and everybody when I moved here. So I feel like it's nice to see the energy and effort that the whole team is putting in to just keep the alumni very engaged and like aware of like everything that's happening at Stony Brook. So I feel like it honestly was a lot of fun. Even meeting there's a lot of alumni out here in California that I just didn't know about. They're just everywhere. And you just don't know until they come in a room and they're all talking to each other about like their different experiences. And, you know, some of them graduated in 1980, some of them graduated in 1990, and then you have like 2000s, and then the people that just graduated last year. And it was nice to see everybody in the room kind of like just like talking about their experiences at Stony Brook and just how their careers had gone. So I really appreciate like the whole team coming out to California. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I think, part of the reason why I feel like I was successful is I never felt like there was a barrier between me and the Harvard students. So like a school is a school and you go there. I mean, the way that I viewed it is you go there for your education, but you go there also for the network of like the other students. And I think what I did when I was there is I took full advantage of that. And I went out, I went to different groups. I did different, they had different activities while I was there. I think I did like, deck hockey in one of the big gyms. And then I would study with a big group of people, and we kind of camaraderie, like there was a lot of camaraderie that I had fostered with just different groups of people. I think part of my success was me living on campus. I think my family lived about an hour away from Stony Brook, and I was fortunate enough to have enough like means to like live on campus. And it created this environment where, if you're living there 24 hours a day, there's no reason you shouldn't be engaging like the community as a student. And I think for me, like when I graduated, it was the same experience whether you went to Harvard or Stanford or any of these other schools. And I think, for all of you coming out of Stony Brook, don't view anyone as like better than you. If that makes sense, and don't view it as like you're at a disadvantage in any way, because you're not. Like you came from a really prestigious school. And I think the advantage you have going to Stony Brook is that you're not coming out with as much debt as a lot of these other students are. So some of them at these other schools, they come out with enormous amounts of debt. And for you come out a little bit less stressed out because you may not have that burden of, $200,000, like, or whatever crazy amount it is that a lot of the students from a lot of other schools can come out with. So yes, a lot of the students come out with debt, but I think one of the benefits and pros of Stony Brook is it's a reasonable tuition and it gives you a really valuable education that you can use anywhere. And for me, going up against any student at Harvard or any student at Stanford, you're exactly the same. And I know it's hard to hear that, but they've just been around and they have a brand, people have heard of, but at the same time, if you're in the same room with them, I think you can like do the same work. So for me, I always came out with that mindset. I can just get those jobs. I can do that startup. I can like get that position. Nothing that they've done is more extraordinary than what we've done at Stony Brook. And, when you go through Stony Brook, it's a lot of the courses can be grueling and stressful and hard and complex. And, I don't think that Harvard is teaching it in a special way that's going to make it better, or Stanford, than you guys. So, for me, I had this mindset, like, I can do it. I'll figure it out. Nothing is going to like put this barrier between me and like the job that I wanted or the career that I wanted. I think just when you're going through school, just remember that. Partly why I'm successful is because I didn't have this barrier mindset, and just I know it's hard to take that away. And, a lot of students bring that up to me and I'm like, just don't think that way because it's incorrect thinking. I did a 2-year degree. So I had an associate's degree before I went to Stony Brook. So I had, I would say, a little bit more maturity when I came into Stony Brook, which allowed me to like value the education I was getting. And so I came into Stony Brook and was kind of processing everything that was happening there. And they have this big medical school, and a lot of students want to go into pre-med there. It's like a very coveted thing. I think pre-med at Stony Brook is very much like this creme de la creme. And the other creme de la creme there is, I think, like the they have a lot of like other things there, like the arts and computer science and engineering and all of these other areas. So I felt like, what am I going to do, right? As I was going through and figuring out like what courses I was going to take, I realized, like, one is I liked psychology. I felt like psychology was something I could do there. And I felt like it was an interesting topic for me. So I kind of guided myself there. The other was also, I felt like psychology was good, but I was worried that I wasn't going to have more opportunity if I didn't double major. So I double majored in computer science. I tried it out at first. And it was a rough go of it. Like, I'm not going to lie, like computer science at Stony Brook is very, very hard. And I felt like if I dual majored, it kind of would be like a redundancy. If one didn't work out, the other would in some weird way. And I'm like, let me learn both and figure this out and find my way and my path. And I did a lot of other things at Stony Brook. Like I took courses in, Chinese history and, different arts and different areas of different classes. But at the end of the day, I picked computer science and psychology. And I felt like that for me was like the best of both worlds in going through it. I'm not going to lie, I struggled in the computer science part of it. It was really rough. It was a rough time. Like, they gave you very hard classes, and my brain was more naturally inclined to the psychology classes. So I could study less in the psychology classes because I understood it. Like, I just kind of went that way. But I also took something that I felt uncomfortable in and I felt like would be a valuable resource for like my career. Anyway, I gruelingly went through it, figured I could do a master's there or a PhD. I did, looking at the school, and I was like, oh, there's a program here for like a master's and you can get a master's fairly fast. Let me try to do that. Got my master's at Stony Brook, but also felt like I was missing out on like what was happening in the world, right? So I was like, if I do a PhD, I something was telling me it may not be for me. So after I finished my master's in computer science at Stony Brook, which was very hard, it was not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. So like, I did my master's in computer science at Stony Brook and graduated. And I remember going to the career center and panicking and being like, what am I going to do with my life? Now I have like all this free time. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And in the process of like, even that, going through school, I took a few interviews like in school to see like, could I get an internship? And I don't think I interned. I don't think I interviewed well. Like, I interviewed at Microsoft. They had this really fancy program when I was in school where they would fly you out to like their campus, and you would go there for a whole day and they would interview you for a whole day. And I remember going to that campus and being like, something's off. Like, I felt the excitement of work, like the people working at Microsoft, but something was off. And maybe it was my interview, maybe it was the people asking me the questions, but I didn't get an internship there. I didn't get an internship anywhere actually while I was like doing my undergrad or master's. So I was horrible at interviewing. So like, I graduated my master's and I'm panicking and I'm like applying to any jobs I could get. I was like panicking. And again, there's like Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg is in the city and everybody wants to work at Bloomberg because they pay well. So I applied to Bloomberg, and I had a friend who like pulled me in to get an interview, and a bunch of my friends were going to Bloomberg, and I bombed it. I bombed the interview. I bombed the interview at Bloomberg, and I'm like, oh man, this is rough. Like, getting a job is hard. It kind of sucks. I probably applied to like 200 jobs. And then there was one job that I applied to, and it was this one guy working in the city, and they were working on this idea. It was actually Oxford, Stanford, and Yale. They got funded like several $1 million to create online courses. And this is before like, Udemy, Udacity, YouTube was big. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but they had this idea, Oxford, Stanford, and Yale, that they could like do online courses and like have people learn. And it was a startup. So like, it was a non-profit startup idea, a concept. And I got the job because the guy I interviewed with just liked me. Something was like vibing. And I also took a really low salary. So I took a really low salary at a non-profit. And it was a startup, so it felt like there was very few people there. It was 12 people, and there was one developer. that was building all of the ideas in the company. And then they had a bunch of PhDs creating the course content. So I get this job, I start going to the city at like 8 a.m. every day. And I'm like, oh, this is different, because you could pick your time in school. Like you could pick whatever you want to go to class. And it was just suddenly I'm like, I have to commute an hour to work. I have to commute an hour home. Okay. And I'm like getting used to that. And I'm realizing like, oh, this is a startup that's struggling. I immediately felt the pressure and the stress of like these people from Oxford, Stanford, and Yale struggling to make this thing work, because they wanted to have people buy online courses and they wanted to teach them like, continuing education. And it was my first dip in like the corporate world where like I didn't have control of my time per se. I was like forced into this, I had to be there at 8 a.m. and I had to like finish at like 4 or 5 p.m. And I'm like getting used to this. And I'm like, this is different than Stony Brook. It's really different. It was like an awakening. And I'm like, I'll have to do this till I'm like 50, right? And I'm like going through this psychological thing in my head. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be different. Like, this is not like as free flowing as like school was, where like you pick your professors and you get to like pick your classes. So there was like a sadness in me, where I'm like, oh, this is like hard, and like I don't control what I'm going to do with my life. Anyway, I'm at this company and they're struggling pretty bad, and over time that developer leaves. He just goes, I'm out. Like I can't work at this thing anymore. It's too stressful. So like I'm left alone, like in this startup. Like, oh my god, this is really hard. And then they pull in other people and, another engineer and then another engineer. So they had a few engineers in this like small startup, but I saw it like slowly dying. And it, I kind of left right before it faded away. And it was really sad because it was a really good team of people that were very passionate about educating people in the world. And, for me, I jumped into another startup, and it was a startup with like 3 people. And it was like, I could interview in small group settings. That's what I realized. It's like small group settings is where I can get a job. Like the bigger companies, you're interviewing with 5-6 people. You say the wrong thing, whatever, you wear the wrong thing. You have the wrong hat on. You wear the wrong, color or something. And they just say you're not a good fit for a company. But with these like ragtag, smaller like teams inside of New York City, I noticed that they would just hire based off of like their gut more than anything, right? And it was like a quick decision for like a startup. So I get another job at another startup. The other company goes bankrupt, the one that, that had the 12 people in it from Oxford, Stanford, and Yale. The nonprofit like disbands. And I go work at this other smaller startup, and they get acquired. They get acquired by a bigger company, probably like 6 months in to me working there. And the acquisition was basically, I'd call it like an acqui-hire, where they absorb you, the 3 people, it was like 4 people. They absorbed us into this like bigger company. And I'm like, oh, this is strange. Like we're moving into this bigger company with like 150 people now. Biggest, place I would ever work is, and then they move us in there. And then I felt a lack of control in my life. Like I'm kind of just doing what people would tell me to do. Right. So like, and it was hard work. I'm not going to lie. It's like you're building software and it's not easy. And my brain was like, how do I do this? And like, they're giving me projects and I felt like I didn't have control. Like, so the first startup, I felt like I didn't have control. The second startup basically got absorbed into this bigger company and I didn't have control. And I'm doing all of this work for all of these people. And I'm like, this doesn't feel good to me. Something about it doesn't feel right. Maybe it was like not the right home for me. And anyway, that company, 2008, implodes and goes bankrupt. And I'm like, okay, I graduated from school. They promised me safety. This was in my head. I promised myself safety. I get a degree and I'll be safe. Like, that's just what I thought, right? Like you graduate and you're safe. The reality is like the first company didn't, keep me safe. The second company didn't keep me safe. They both went bankrupt. So I'm sitting there like I'm jobless again. And I'm like, okay, I have $50,000 in my bank account. Like I saved some money. That was the one thing I did, is I was a pretty good saver. I didn't like go out and travel the world. I should have, but I didn't. So I saved like $50,000 and I'm like, I worked at one startup. I learned a bit. I worked at another startup. I learned a bit. Should I go get another job in New York City? Like, that's where all the jobs are. Go to New York City, you get a job, right? That's just what you do. Anyway, I knew another guy from Stony Brook, and he calls me up and he's like, I'm losing my mind. I'm working at this bigger company. I need to quit. And I'm like, he was one of my roommates in college. And he's like, I need to quit my job. I just need to get out. And I'm like, I know this guy from Stony Brook. I know he can code. I know he's a software developer. I saw him get all A's at Stony Brook. He got all A's and like, he got his degree and he was like awesome and he was smart at what he did. And I'm like, I'm jobless and I have $50,000. He's like losing his mind at his current company where he's making a lot of money. He's making a lot of money. And we have a conversation, you know, and I'm like, let's go meet in New York City. So we meet in New York City. We start meeting at like Panera Bread and like meeting. And I remember him being very serious. Like he's going to quit and like, he's going to do something. He's going to lose his mind. And he was just like, I think there's certain type of personality that just can't do it that long. Like work in a large company. I didn't even have a chance to get to that point. But for him, he was like losing his mind and he wanted to like do something else. Like he wanted to do something where he had control of his destiny. And there was, you know, I'm like, all right, let's see if we can do this. Anyway, he quits his job in 2008 when everybody was getting like laid off. So he just walks out of the building, he quits. And I'm like, we'll meet in the city every day and we'll figure something out. So we met, you know, every day in the city, 2 Stony Brook graduates, and I had $50,000. And I remember I was like, all right, if I spend $1,000 a month on rent, I could live a long time. That was my thinking. And I'm like, I'll figure it out, right? Like, what do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose. And, you know, we just would meet every day. And he was, the one thing I really appreciated was this other Stony Brook graduate would literally meet with me every day and he had no job. So we're these 2 jobless guys in New York City and we're like, we need to rent a desk. We need to rent 2 desks, and we get 2 desks. We find 2 desks in New York City at this like shared desk place. We get the desks. So, or we meet, and you know, the idea for us was like, let's do something in healthcare. Because I wanted to do pre-med at Stony Brook, right? Like that was part of it, as pre-med is big at Stony Brook. There's got to be something there. And I can kind of develop and he could kind of code. Between those skills, we can figure out a way to make something that people want and we'll make a living somehow. Like we start coding and we figure out, oh, you can send a text message to a doctor saying a patient needs an appointment. Why don't we try to sell that? A text message to a doctor that a patient like is going to be scheduled for a text message to a patient. I'm sorry, text message to a patient that they need to come in to see their doctor. That's what we built, is like a text messenger that texts patients that they need to come in to see their doctor. That was the first product we built. So this was 2008, then 2009. So it was before like really the mobile revolution, before the iPhone came out around that time. So the iPhone was the first like browser based like phone, and it was game changer, right? It was like a game changer where you could actually go on your phone and like log into a web page. It sounds so silly, but like before then there was Nokia and BlackBerry, and they were just, and the Razor phone, and they were very unusable. They were just phones with texting. So everybody had a phone that they could text on, and they also had pagers back then, so people would text each other. Texting was just really big. That's why it's still big today, because it was just the only way to get information to people. But we figured out a way to like actually text a patient to come in to see their doctor. And it sounds so silly. That was not done ever. And it was like the first like innovative thing that we did. And, you know, we had a couple of doctors want that thing. And it was, how did we get the doctors? We would just go door to door, right? You ask your doctor, you say, hey, you know, would you use this? And if they say no, you go to another doctor and you say, hey, would you use this? And it's okay to like get people to use something for free. Like that was in my mindset. Like, let's just see if we can get someone to use something. And, you know, there was no iPads back then. There was no like Snapchat didn't exist. Facebook was kind of the new thing. It was like really cool and innovative, and it was the hot startup. Everybody was like, what is Facebook doing? Because it was just so insanely cool that you could have a real profile online. Now it's just like, what? Everybody has a profile. Everybody has a profile online. I mean, for me, again, I graduated several years ago, but I think for me, there was a desperation to pass the class. And that desperation created a social anxiety in me, which allowed me to create friend groups at Stony Brook. And that skill helped me pass my classes. I took that skill and applied that social anxiety to like after I left college, where it was, how do I find people to help me, right? And it was really productive for them because like people wanted to pass the classes. And back when I went to school, there was no ChatGPT. When I went to school, there was no iPhone to look up the data. Like I had to buy the paper book. I had to look through the book with a highlighter, and there was no YouTube to look anything up. So I was under immense stress. If I couldn't understand the book, maybe I could understand it from my fellow college students. And there was a lot of classes where I struggled and I just couldn't read the book. So I'd go, let me go find like 5-10 people in the class that could help me learn this stuff. Some of the time I went to the professor, but it wasn't always. So like I would get a friend group together. I'd be like, we're going to meet at 8 p.m. We're going to go to the, Stoller Center or wherever. Or we're going to meet in the dorms and we're just going to study and we're just going to sit there. So I would get their cell phone numbers and I would figure out who would be willing to come. And some of them were really bad at class and some of them were really good at class. So I would just, whoever showed up. And then it was just like a way for me to like get through those struggles of like those classes. And I think I was using that as a skill in itself. It was a skill that I learned at Stony Brook and honed it at Stony Brook, where I was like, okay, this stress creates a positivity where I have all these people learning from each other and we would graduate the classes together. And like, I applied that stress also after Stony Brook, right? So I would go, okay, who can help us like make a living? And what's crazy, there was another guy in the class that I never really interacted with too much, but he was in the math center and I would learn math from him. And after I graduated and I'm like jobless, right? Like at this desk in New York City, I emailed him because I saw like he started his own company. It was so arbitrary. I don't know how I stayed in touch, but like I texted him. He said, I'll meet with you. Let's meet at 10 p.m. I'm like, sure. 10 p.m. sounds great. We would meet at my desk in New York City, and then he would just sit there for like 3-4 hours. I don't know why he did it. He was just having fun. He would just sit there at my desk 3-4 hours and be like, well, if you do this, you do that. He would just kind of brainstorm a lot and just throw ideas out. And like, so it was a conglomeration of like several like support systems from Stony Brook that had helped. I mean, one thing that's really nice is you can reach out to Stony Brook, and I did that a lot when I started that first company. I don't know, I forget if it was like the dean of Stony Brook at the time or the head of the computer science department. Pretty sure it was the head of the computer science department, Ari Kaufman. I never took any of his classes. I never knew him as a person, but I emailed him because he ran the computer science department or something. I email him and he responds and he says, come in, I'll meet with you whenever you want and I'll give you advice on like your company. And, I came into Stony Brook and we sat down in one of the offices. He had a really nice like conference table and 3 other PhDs in computer science just sat with us, other professors, with me and my co-founder at the time. They had nothing, there was just goodwill. They were doing this just to help us. And they're like, let's make intros to you to the hospital. Maybe they can give you some ideas. And we actually went to the hospital. They did make intros to everyone at the hospital. And the hospital was just like, oh, Stony Brook alumni, no problem. Come on in. Like, and they would just show us like, we're doing this over here. Would you like to do something in this? They were doing something over here. Would you like to do something in this? And, I was processing it all. And I was like, it was a really nice support system that was just there to help, right? Again, like for me, I think the hospital was thinking about things at like hospitals. So I was like, I don't think, my brain was saying, if we build something for the Stony Brook hospital, I don't know if I'm a good enough salesperson to sell this to other hospitals. That was like my red flag. I'm like, maybe we learn and gather and like process like whatever they're telling us, but we could go sell this to more doctors in New York because they are just like, they're just solo doctors. You can sell one person. If you sell to a hospital, it's a lot of people involved and this bureaucracy and complex stuff. But, Stony Brook let us see that. And I remember just sitting there in the hospital, just talking to the people there. And I'm like, we can probably build software. I think we can do it, like, for doctors. You know, I would go to Stony Brook every couple of weeks. I'd drive there with my car. And I remember thinking, like, the gas is expensive. Like, I'm like, this is our burn rate. Like, how long can we survive, like, on this money? You know, my 50,000 is now 30,000. I'm like, how do we figure this out? And, you know, we're processing it all. And we started to build in the cloud. This sounds so silly, but like the cloud was like a web browser, and you just log in and you can access it from home or from the work. A lot of people didn't have software like that. So we were building like medical software, like a scheduling system where you could send a text to patients and you could see stuff in the cloud, meaning a web browser. Nobody was using it really, right? Like, so like we had like 3 doctors using our product, and they weren't paying us essentially, right? And we're like a year into this thing now. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Why am I suffering? But like in the back of my head, I'm like, well, if I go back to those larger companies, you know, it's going to maybe go bankrupt or they'll let me go. Look what happened in 2008. They let all those people go. So I was like, I'm going to take this path and spend all my money and see where I get. So my mind was set. Like, I'm just going to just go down this. And my co-founder was not giving up, who was from Stony Brook. I think our Stony Brook, like, friendship was the foundation, honestly, of like me continuing like this journey, because we were friends. Like, any friends you have from Stony Brook, just make a lot of friends, and, you know, just be sure to like keep them in your Rolodex, because like you might go get a job and you might like not like it after 2 years or 3 years, and they might just be in the same mind space. But you know, we're working on this company for like the first year. And I remember this company, Apple, saying that they're going to launch this iPad in 2010, right? And I'm like, okay, this iPad thing is going to be launched. We have this cloud-based thing. It has a calendar to send text messages to patients. So you're sending text messages to patients. What if we were to like take this iPad thing and like make it all work together somehow? And, you know, this is like where I think right place, right time, no one else is doing it, is where like it changed our life. Anyway, we start building on the iPad before it comes out. Like, we buy Macs. We literally go to the store. We buy 2 MacBooks. And I'm like, all right, burn rate, you know, Macs are expensive. I'm learning how to use a Mac because before then I was using a PC. So I'm like, all right, let's try to like build something for the iPad. And we start building like the very first medical record. I was looking at Wikipedia pages initially to build a medical record on the iPad. And I'm like, let's see how this would work. We have this cloud-based interface with an API. It could talk to the cloud. This is all revolutionary. Like, back then it was revolutionary. And I'm like, how do you do that? And we would meet every day at these 2 desks in New York City, and we would work on this iPad medical record. Anyway, fast forward, the April 2010, the iPad is launched, and then Apple starts selling them like crazy. And we went from like 3-4 users to like thousands of downloads of our app within like the first day it was launched, the iPad was released. So it took us like 2 years, from 2008, 2009, 2010, it was like 3 years to get to that point where like we went from struggling to, okay, there's something here. People want to use an iPad for medical stuff. And then my mind was racing. We have to get prescriptions on this. We have to get labs on this. We have to get everything on this device. Like, we have to like make sure it works fully like a medical record, and you can get up from your desk at a doctor's office as a physician and you can walk around and like take photos, take videos. You could, you know, cross collaborate with other doctors in your office. And I'm just like, my mind was spinning, because I'm like, we have to get this like really well done and better than anything. And there was 0 competitors on the iPad. Everyone thought it was a joke. People thought it was a gaming toy. Like, people thought it was, and what I mean by that is like, what Stony Brook University uses, the company, I'm not going to name the name, thought the iPad was a joke. So Stony Brook bought software for the hospital to run it, and they didn't build anything on the iPad. Like, but we were getting all of these doctors like seeing the vision of like, oh, I could become a mobile doctor and like give care in a different way. This is amazing, and it's revolutionary. Like, Stony Brook kept me going because they would give me the time of day when a lot of other people wouldn't. I would spend, 2 hours at least 2 to 4 hours a month with Stony Brook medical professionals, like that actually were seeing patients at the hospital. And like, we never worked with Stony Brook because it just never fit. Like, I didn't want to like be stressed out trying to sell to another hospital. But they were just like feeding me information on like what we should be doing. I remember seeing one hand surgeon, like he was like, I'll never forget this. He's like, I hate that I have to like, whenever there's a problem with the hand, I have to like type it into the computer. And he's like, it's so stressful. And I remember him saying that, and I'm like, how do we like do that better? Right. So like I was getting all these bits of information, and Ari Kaufman was very honest with us. He's like, I don't know if you guys should keep doing this, because we weren't making any money for a year. Like the first year, he's like, why are you, he was being really honest. He's like, why don't you go find a job? This is probably not a good idea. Like he was like being very practical about it, but he was like, I'll just keep helping you, but you may not make it. Right? He was just being really honest, because you saw like we were being very honest about like our cash and, how much we were losing per month, in our life savings. And, he was just like, what intro would you like next? Which was not really nice of him. But yeah, I hope that gives you guys a sense, like it is possible to do a startup, but it's not an easy journey. I wish I had kept in touch with more people from Stony Brook. There were a lot of good, smart people that there was no Facebook back then, and I didn't ask them for their cell phone number, and they just went and graduated, and they kind of just disappeared in the world. So I feel like if there's someone in your class that's smart, add them on Facebook, add them on Instagram, add them on Snapchat, add them on whatever social network, just get their cell phone number, but just get their information so you can have that network after college. The first company, Dr. Chrono, the medical iPad company that I built, I sold it in 2021. It was a big success, so it was life-changing for me. The one thing I think that joining a startup can do for you guys is it give you, if you do win in a startup, the outcomes are abnormally higher than just getting a job. The opportunity to like have a bigger outcome is potentially there. So like me going down that path helped me, sell that company, and I'm able to like essentially like do what I want to do at this point. And I think, if you guys graduate and you do want to go get a job, look for me, like a profile is a company that's on the up and up. And that is like small. Like, so for me, a company that's like between, 20 people to 200 people. And they're doing something unique. Like a company like Perplexity. I don't know if you guys know that company, but is doing something super unique. Like look at companies like that. But what I decided to do, I sold my company in 2021. I was like self-reflecting, and I said, let me just do one more company. Because the journey is fun, honestly. I love the ups and downs of like a startup, which some people don't like. I don't know if everybody likes that bumpiness, but I started another company about 2 years ago with other people that I like met while I was working on my first startup, and just be networking. I think networking is undervalued a lot of the time, and Stony Brook, what's the real value of it? It's the network and the education. So don't undervalue the network of like whenever you go to like a class. Like one tip I have is go to a class, and then if you're sitting next to somebody, just talk to them. Like say, I'm going to be studying on, Thursday at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. Would you like to join me? And then just do that with like 2 or 3 people. And then you start a small study group. It creates a nice momentum. And whatever, even if people have their own like small groups, just ignore that and just ask them to join you to be part of the study group, and invite, if they have their friends, just invite them also. And then you have like a small group. I think what I've been hearing from a lot of students is they're isolating a lot now, because it's easy to just use ChatGPT, go to your dorm room, go home. I would fight that urge. And the best place to like do that is in the classroom. Like ask people, I have a study group for this class, 5 p.m. Would you like to come on Thursdays? Like ask like the people that after everybody leaves the room, and then there's like 5, 6, 10 people left talking to the professor, just bring it up to them, and then just like create that group. You have the time, like, it depends on where you are in your life. Like if you're going for your PhD and you've graduated and you're just trying to get your PhD at this point and there's no more classes, that's different. But if you're in a class, there's no excuse to like not try to like create some friendships. It gets harder as you get older, guys, also. So like I think college, I'm saying it's your best chance to like get friends it gets harder as you like are in your 30s, 40s, 50s. So just, don't stress about the class as much. Just get the friendships going. Also, it's like super, super important. I would recommend emailing the founders directly. Now, be resourceful, and if you want to join a startup, try to find the founders' email addresses or guess at it. Shoot them an email and say, hey, I would love to just talk and get some insights. I'm a student. Generally, people like to help students, right? So I think that's one way to do it. And just a lot of people just get scared and they don't want to email the founder or the CEO. I would just ignore that fear. I was watching this one video on writing an excitement graph. An excitement graph, how everybody has yearly goals? Write a yearly excitement graph and say what are things that are going to make you have an excited year? And one of those for me is talking to people that I would be afraid to talk to normally. So I think if you're going to graduate soon, you're already starting to get that anxiety and that pent up stress, I would spend 1 hour a day emailing founders until you get a response. And then just ask them what do you look for? Would you be willing to have me as an intern for a short period? Or, or just talk to them. Honestly, just get insight from them and be hey, how did you do it? I'd love to know more. Whenever a Stony Brook student reaches out to me, I tend to respond. Whenever someone is trying to sell me something, I may not respond. So students tend to get, you're at this point in your life where people are more open to talking to you because people like to help people when they're in their, earlier in their career. But try to find contacts. There are startup events in New York City, New York Tech Meetup. That was probably the biggest event I had gone to in New York Tech Meetup. I don't know if it's around anymore, but they had this big, beautiful hall and they had about 3,000 to 5,000 people in this room. And they were just all startups, all just trying to do their own things. And I remember seeing some amazing companies that became crazy big. The first 3D printer company was in New York City and they were presenting it on stage when I was there. And I'm that's insane. A 3D printer, what the heck is that? There were some really big startups Vimeo. There's YouTube, there's Vimeo, and there's a few other streaming platforms, but the founder of Vimeo was there pitching it and being hey, we're creating this YouTube type product. And it was early in his career, but it was that it's a big startup now. And people have probably seen at least one video on Vimeo, but that was probably one of the startup events I went to. If you're looking to get a job, I would try to look for startups Y Combinator is one that I recommend a lot because I went through that. I got into this thing called Y Combinator twice. I recommend looking at Y Combinator's job posts and then email and not applying through their normal system, just to email the founder directly. So it's kind of a side pass where, you can see a company. So after me and my co-founder launched the iPad medical record, then I had asked one of the partners who was the founder of Reddit. Reddit was not big back when we were 2010. Reddit was not big, but I had asked them. I emailed Y Combinator and I said, to the founder, Paul Graham, I said, can you please come to our offices in New York City? And he said, no, I live in California. I'm not coming there. That was his response. And it was a nicer email. It was polite. But my response was, is anybody going to be in New York City? And he said, the founder of Reddit is in New York City. He'll swing by your offices. So when you get a no, it sometimes isn't a total no. Anyway, founder of Reddit came by our offices and then they invested as a Y Combinator. Y Combinator, the firm, invested in my startup. Here, I'd go to startup jobs here. If you're an engineer, again, if you're doing something else like marketing or sales, there's a lot of options. So engineering, you go here. They just essentially list out all the companies that are looking right now. And you can see designers, products, recruiting, HR, sales, science. If you have an art degree, still apply. If you're getting something else like a business degree, still apply. If you don't feel comfortable applying, still apply. It's not going to hurt you to just ask, right? There's nothing that will hurt you in asking. There's a ton of New York City companies. But this is New York. You could go to any place. If you go outside of New York to California, there's way more jobs, I would say. just because Y Combinator companies are primarily, they ask you to come to California for a bit of time, and then a lot of the companies will stay. But if you go here, you can just see tons and tons and tons of jobs. Now, getting angels, that's a different thing. I think if you're looking to get angel investors, you can apply to Y Combinator directly. They have this apply button. So you go to ycombinator.com, you just type it in Google, you just type in Y Combinator, apply, right? And I get pushback from people, oh, it's impossible to get in, it's impossible to get in. If you say that and you don't even try, you're not going to get in. You're not going to get anything you want in life if you don't ask. If you didn't apply to Stony Brook, you wouldn't have gotten into Stony Brook. So you have to apply. And I think this is a numbers game to Y Combinator, where apply once a year, apply once a quarter. They give you $500,000 in a 10-minute Zoom interview. So they'll interview you for 10 minutes. Generally, they're looking for at least one technical co-founder. The other person could be technical or not. You don't have to build anything. It's just an idea. So if you go in there and you say you're a whatever, you just graduated with your computer science degree and you have a co-founder who's, a psychology major, you fit their profile. They just want to see if you're serious, you're going to do it full time, and they want to see what your idea is. And if you're nice people, they don't want mean people. They get a sense some people could be mean. The application probably takes about 2 hours. If you're, if you're a math major and you don't have a friend who's an engineer who can code, find one. How do you find one? I don't know, put an ad up inside of the computer science department. They have little billboards. Just put an ad and say, looking for a co-founder to apply to Y Combinator, right? What makes me sad is most of the people that apply to this are from Stanford and from other schools. There's probably a handful of 6 people from from Stony Brook that applied to Y Combinator. There are programs in New York City also. I feel like I'm outdated on a lot of the New York City programs, but you could type in this, type in top accelerators, startup accelerators, and you can just get lists. So here's a list of the best 32 in 2025. And I would apply to all of these if you really wanted to start a company, or at least some of them. The best way is probably through email or LinkedIn. Do you guys have any questions about startups? Any questions about just your career? I'm happy to just hop on a 15-minute Zoom and just help out in any way. Thank you, guys.